Welcome.
Howdy.
And here we are at the Duluth Conservative Podcast. I'm Shawn.
I'm Dave.
And we're going to go through some local issues for Duluth. We're going to go through some Minnesota issues. We're going to go through some national issues. We'll have a little segment on Timmy Waltz. And then we'll talk about health and fitness at the very end. How you doing, Dave?
Surviving. Still surviving.
You can tell my office is a shambles. I've literally just gotten done rearranging most of the stuff, so you see garbage all over the place here, but we're going to do our best to do the show, and I've got a bunch of stuff to go over today, so let's get on to it right away, shall we?
Oh yeah.
All right, so first thing I want to talk about is Duluth stuff, and we're going to talk about the Duluth property tax increases that are not proposed, but talked about on Tuesday. So Mayor Reinhardt has given the State of the City address, and his comments were, if we want to maintain our existing levels of spending in Duluth, we need now check me if I'm wrong on this, 16% increase next year in property taxes, and then a following 6% increase the next year after that. Is that correct?
Well, I heard 16 next year and 8 in 2 years. So
8 the next one. Okay, so 24%.
24%, correct. Yep.
And I think if I'm right, this is a shot across the bow to the city council and to the city itself. And I'm really liking Reinhardt as the mayor of how he's handling this stuff. And you can tell me what you think about it, but I think it's good to set expectations right off the bat. And I think it was very clear that this is not what he wants to do. This is not his proposal that he's expecting to do. But if we don't do something, this is what's going to happen in order to maintain spending the way it is. So what are your thoughts on this?
Well, after reading the minutes of the city council this last Monday, and since they don't say no to anything, and I was looking at the budget for 24, they call it 2024 online, and how they don't say no to anything, and the amount of waste. One of my favorite things that came from the meeting was in unexpected reimbursements. They have 14,507,000 for transfer to DETA for affordable housing projects.
Oh, okay.
So them saying yes to everything and them just going ahead with everything, that's going to cause the problem.
Yeah, and what is affordable housing? They want to define it. And is it the city's job to provide housing for people? And I don't think it is. I think it's the city's job to zone for housing and to encourage people to come here by incenting with taxes and making sure that we're not overdeveloping in industrial or commercial and having residential. But it's not the city's job to provide housing or to accommodate housing for this city, in my opinion.
Right, you're absolutely correct. And then so to spend $14.5 million on affordable housing would easily be put back in your pocket, because it wouldn't be, you're not building anything. You're just rezoning it.
Yes. I know they've done some stuff about zoning too recently, where they are trying to cram as many houses together as possible in smaller areas. And they're kind of abandoning their previous goal of having housing as a quarter acre or something like that.
Yeah.
And that is in their rights to do that. Obviously, it's just not, I don't think it's a very good thing for a city. And I think the neighbors should be able to have some say in that. And we're going to come back to this a little bit when we're talking about zoning, when we're talking about our Minnesota bills that are coming up, and the Duluth News Tribune sponsored Representative Pete Johnson's plan. I believe it's his plan to talk about zoning and forcing zoning down cities' throats. So we'll come back to that. But I think it's important for people to know that this is coming. I want to make sure that people are watching this. One of the things we're doing this for is because people don't necessarily hear everything. And hopefully if they listen to the show, at least they're aware of what's going on. What Mayor Reinaudo said, I don't know the reaction of the city council, but we're going to have some pretty hard discussions coming up as far as taxation goes, because that's an unsustainable level of increase for 2 years, 24% of increase in property taxes. You will have people fleeing this city in droves.
Well, I think you need to extend it one more to you're going to be leaving the state, because Walls is shoving his budget proposals over to the counties. So he's going to reduce taxes, push it off on the counties. The counties, the only remedy they have is increased property taxes. So you're going to get
Right.
16 from the city, you're going to get 16 from the county, and that's unsustainable. There'll be a lot of housing available because everyone's going to moving out of the state.
Yeah, and what are retirees going to do? I mean, you can't account for this when you're retiring.
Right.
You're 75 now. Let's say you retired 10 years ago, and all of a sudden you can't afford the house you lived in your whole life because the property taxes are killing you. So that's a real problem, and it has to get addressed. And we can't rely on federal money. We can't rely on the amount of state money that we get. It's incredible to see how much state money is provided to this city. We are not sustainable as a city. We got to start thinking about ways to generate revenue for this city. And
Right.
we've got two main things that drive money into this place right now that I can see: tourism and hospitals. All right, we got the big hospital complex. We've got a lot of people coming to this city because we have a big, new, beautiful hospital and medical center. And we have tourism, and we got to figure out ways to increase the tourism dollars that we get in. And that means maybe building out in places that don't necessarily have very much for housing and hotels and resorts, thinking about the East End. And you're going to be hearing about some proposals coming up about Lester Park. And I hope people keep an ear on what is the best solution for that generates revenue for the city and gives us something that we could lower the property taxes, not just raise them, but lower them. Because living out on Maui, it's expensive to live out there. When I lived out there for a couple of years, but the property taxes are dirt cheap. And you know why? Because they push those costs onto the people that are coming out to the resorts. Now, we can't necessarily do the same level in Duluth because we don't have that kind of tourism, but we do have tourism, and we are making a lot of money on taxation. So we need to get those resort tax. We need to get some other kinds of revenues coming into the city, and we need to stop spending what we're spending. And it's going to be tough because I know a lot of the budget comes down to police and firefighters and things we can't live without. There are things we can live without, like you're pointing out, millions of dollars for affordable housing projects or studies. We have a DEI program that isn't costing us very much, but every little bit helps. We need to cut the corners. We need DOGE, Duluth Office of Government Efficiency.
Yeah. And
I just made that name up. I think I'm going to copyright it.
Yeah. And we're sitting on the westernmost port in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
We need to push manufacturing. We need to push importing.
Right.
We need to get that done, because otherwise we're tourism does the problem. The only problem with tourism is your income inequality, because it's usually unskilled laborers at the t-shirt shops or at the restaurants or stuff like that, where if you get manufacturing going in our port and the railroads, those are middle class, upper middle class manufacturing jobs. Mm-hmm. And that will solve a lot of problems, keeping the better houses, keeping the property taxes down.
Yeah. And when they say diversity is our strength, this is what you should be meaning. Diversity of income to a city. We can't rely on one thing, because when tourism is the only thing you're relying on, you're setting yourself up for a big problem. When COVID hit, that revenue just dries up. You've got to have many different irons in the fire for getting money into your city. But part of that is tourism, because we do have a very beautiful place that we can share. I think the East End is a place that we do need to add something to get a bookend to this city, so that we can have a destination place for people to go. and get some businesses out there, because really it's mostly just housing out in the East End and it is no business. But you're right. Mining, even if it's not in Duluth, at the Iron Range or up north, that just trickles down to Duluth. That gives us a lot of revenue.
Yeah, there's a lot of people employed by just the railroad and the shipping yard. There's a lot of people employed. We have to keep that moving.
Yeah. And my other idea from last week that we talked about, an AI center down here, maybe we can entice somebody to build an AI center. We have such access to water, as long as it can be done cleanly. Our access to water is immense, and that's what you need for cooling these systems. And that can generate a lot of revenue too. It's not a ton of jobs, but it is a ton of money that comes through, and energy. So yeah, we need to look at all those things. So I think this should be a wake-up call to people, especially when it comes down to how we're going to get money into the city and what we need to do, as far as what we need to do versus what we'd like to do, and separate that out finally from government to nonprofits and places that do charity, and people can then put their money where their mouth is. Right. All right, let's move on. We got a ton of stuff to go through today, so I'm going to try to pop through it a little bit.
Way too much, yeah.
Way too much. Okay, we'll talk. We'll go skip to number 3 and then we'll come back. But mining cuts will reduce port shipments, which are already down. So there is a report that said that there is a mining company that is cutting a lot of their mining coming up, which is a kind of amazing to me, because of this current federal administration's wanting to do more manufacturing and mining, but they will a reduction in iron ore pellet production on Minnesota's Iron Range will also affect the port of Duluth. Steel and iron ore producer Cleveland Cliffs on March 20 announced the idling of its Minorca mine, Minorca. What is it?
Minorca.
Yeah. Okay. It was, I don't know, there's an R in there, near Virginia, and reduction in iron pellet producing at its Hibbing taconite plant. So that's unfortunate. We need more of that. We need, maybe it's just a matter of things fleshing out for U.S. Steel being bought out, or what it's going to be doing. And just maybe this is just a shuffle, a temporary thing, I'm hoping. But every time this happens, a lot of people suffer because of it. There's a lot of jobs that rely on it, a lot of good jobs that rely on it. And this in just not knowing if your job's going to be there or not all the time. These mining companies up and down, up and down. It would be really nice if this was a lot more stable and kind of diversified across different types of mining too, like helium. We have this massive helium deposit apparently in Minnesota. We've got other type of mining we can do here, but it's unfortunate. So that's something that's come up, and I hope people are aware of that.
Well, the mines had a larger than normal 2024 as far as production goes. So they produced a lot of iron ore last year, so they're ahead of schedule. The auto industry is down a little bit, so they're not demanding as much. And this is a normal cycle for the mines. If you go back, if you keep going back, you'll see year after year that this is something that normally happens. So we can't get too, obviously they're blaming Trump for it, and Trump tariffs, but this is a normal cycle of the mines.
Well, the other thing too is, I mean, when you look at the tariffs, there's going to be some temporary pain that comes with that. But the impetus is to get the production and mining happening in Minnesota itself. When that, or not Minnesota, but the United States. When that happens, the demand is going to be internal as opposed to external. So theoretically, when people start coming to the United States or start pulling their businesses back to the United States, they're going to be wanting to get their iron from the United States as opposed to going outside, because the tariffs are going to be in place. It's the whole reason behind it. It's to make us stronger.
Yeah. So the tariffs are just a temporary pain. Trump has already brought in $3.2 trillion in economic gain, in the 60 days he's been president.
Right.
It's going to take a little bit of time to start working some of this stuff out. But Hyundai is going to build a new plant down south. They're going to need steel. Therefore, the mines will start picking up again.
Right.
It's just going to take a few days, or a few months, but it'll happen.
Yeah. And like we talked about too in another show, the British Empire was the way it was, and it was able to achieve so much because all of their items out in their empire had to be manufactured on the island of England. And that meant that the wealth came back to their island, that came back to their country. And that's a very good model to look at because they were very powerful until they switched that over. All right. Let's see. I hate these freaking stories, but we're going to bring it up. Duluth pastor resigns amid protests over sexual abuse of 2 girls. County records show he admitted to assaulting 2 13-year-old girls while serving as a youth pastor in the Twin Cities in 2001. I don't know how you're a pastor. I don't know how a church allows this. I don't know why it seems like the churches have been infiltrated by people that are not Christian at all. And it's time to expunge these people out of the system. Oh, you moved. I like your place. Yeah, it's just time. We can't keep having these false pastors, these false Christians involved with the Christian church. As a Christian myself, I think it's time to get rid of these people. If they're ever accused of sexual assault, they should be out. There should be no avenue for them back in, except for as a member of a church. And even then, they got to be watched all the time, but they should have no involvement with the church. And what is it about the Christian church that attracts these people that think they can just prey on us? It's got to stop.
Yeah, I mean, the guy did serve his 20 plus years in prison for his sins. However,
I don't care.
At some point you have to say enough's enough, and we can't have you as a leader. We can't have you as a person.
Right.
Continuing.
Right. You served your time. That's one thing. You're out. You should be registering as a sex offender, and you should be nowhere near a leadership position in any organization, especially the church.
Right.
So that just boils my potato. As you may be able to tell. I'm going to go on. Go ahead.
They are protesting his church, and to make sure that he retired, I guess. So the protest did work. So he won't be around kids anymore. But hopefully the word gets out of who he is.
Yeah.
Therefore, people will keep their kids away from him.
This reminds me of the Catholic Church stuff that happened, which just appalled me. And the problem was that, not that it happened because you can't control everybody. It's that the church hid it and then moved those pastors around to go prey on other people in other areas. That is unacceptable. Anybody that was involved with that should be excommunicated. You can still be a Christian in jail, and then you can come out and try to repent for your sins. But my God, it happens so much. And it feels like people are coming into this church to destroy it, into this faith, just to destroy it. They don't believe in the principles of the faith. They just come in to feed off of it. And it's disgusting to me.
Yeah, if someone does something wrong, you throw them out. Very simple.
Right.
You separate them from what you believe. The church should have done that from day one.
Correct. You can still minister to him, but he's nowhere to be found around people, but around kids, around any kind of leadership. Doesn't talk. You are the lowest level of the church to not be able to speak because of what you've done.
Correct.
All right. I want to move on to the last topic for Duluth. We're already 20 minutes in, Dave.
Well, we only got 4 hours left.
Strap yourself in, brother. We're just getting started. All right. We got a letter to the editor of the Duluth News Tribune, who endorsed both Alicia Kozlowski and Pete Johnson, which we'll go into further later. And this is a commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Commerce. And this letter to the editor of Duluth News Tribune was talking about how because of our Minnesota's high dependence on Canadian source of energy, the tariffs that the federal government is putting in place will disproportionately affect Minnesotans in their pocketbooks. And there's a quote in there that says, in addition to the direct increase in the cost of Minnesota's energy, the tariffs could create energy shortages and negatively impact Minnesota's overall economy, as our state gets its vast majority of our natural gas and crude oil from Canada. Do you get the sense that the commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Commerce doesn't understand why that's a problem and where the problem lies, as opposed to being a problem with the tariffs or the federal government? It's a problem with Minnesota getting foreign oil and being so dependent on foreign oil.
Yeah, which is a 100% lie, because Minnesota gets less than 2.5% of our energy from Canada. When they were talking about the tariffs, energy tariffs, it was mostly having to do with New York and Pennsylvania. But Minnesota that's not why we're going to have shortages.
Yeah.
So,
and I think
she's just a political hack for Walz, is what she is.
Yeah, and we talked about it before. Trump puts on tariffs on whiskey. They turn around and turn off our power, and then they call us the bad guys.
Yeah.
You know, we're not tariffing anything that is crucial to your survival. But Canada's first thought was, we're going to tear up your energy. Now they've backtracked on that, because I think the response from Trump was, we don't need your energy. We don't need anything you have to offer, honestly. We can do it all ourselves. So Good luck with all that. So, and I agree with that. I think that's a strong stance to take, and I think it's the right one.
Yeah, and Canada's is tariffing our eggs and our milk at almost 300%.
Without this, right? That was before.
Correct.
That was last year.
So, we haven't been doing anything to make America great again, or Minnesota better. We just been taking it, is basically what all it is. Now we're not taking it. We're going to get, Trump has already put the permission to turn the oil pumps back on, get all the energy going again. Drill, baby, drill. So we're back to, it's going to take a little while to get up to speed, but we won't need Canada anymore for anything.
We should be very, very, very self-sufficient. Things coming into this country should be luxury items and things that the other countries want to send out because it's special to that country. And energy is not part of it. Manufacturing our medication is not part of it. Manufacturing of our precious metals should not be part of it. So as soon as we get to the point where we're self-sufficient, then we're going to look a lot better. Right.
Right. And back to your original point is, if we shouldn't be relying on anybody for our energy sources.
Mm-hmm.
So for her to say something ridiculous like that is obviously ridiculous, because it's not true.
Right.
Or it's a problem that we can easily fix.
Yes. And it won't take that long either. Right. I was really shocked when we had COVID-19, and it was, we stopped getting essential medications because China stopped shipping them. That was a real wake-up call for me, saying we can't have that. Not only can we not rely on them for our medication, we don't know exactly what they put into it. Right. I mean, we can try to regulate it. We can get our best self, but this is China. I'm not saying they're our enemy, but they're definitely not our friend. They're a hostile nation to us. And we need to be very careful about the power we give to that country.
Definitely.
All right. I think that wraps it up for Duluth stuff, unless you have something else.
No. There was an article in Alpha News that basically debunked everything that she said.
Yeah.
So
great. Okay.
Go to Alpha News and you type in Canada tariffs, and it completely disproves everything she says. She's a political hack. We need to get rid of her, like her Grace Arnold, commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Commerce. We just need to get rid of these people who are just political hacks. That's all.
Yeah. And with that, we're going to go into the Minnesota bills. But the interesting thing about what you just said too, is go take a look at some of the people's occupation for that are legislators and representatives. Some of them have absolutely no reason to be in where they're at, and they're making very, very hard decisions for us. And I'll go back to the city council of Duluth too. Look at some of their background, some of their experience. They have no business making these decisions for the rest of our city, except for the fact that they were elected in. And that needs to change. People need to wake up. People need to start electing people, and good people need to start stepping up to try to fill those places too. It's very hard to give up your time and want to volunteer when you've got a successful business or you're doing something that maybe you're retired now, but people need to step up. We need better leaders in leadership positions in our city, in our state, and our federal government. It can't just be the case that people just default back and just fall into a position on the city council and then decide how we're going to spend our tax money and where we're going to get, how we're not spending our tax money or how we're not doing taxation. That's even worse. They have no benefit. I mean, if they have no economic development area in their brain and they've never thought about it and everything's just like they're like trust fund babies. They just know how to spend money. They don't know how to make money.
Until we have a city council that starts saying, no, we're not going to spend that money. Duluth's in deep trouble.
Right. All right. I think I have 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh God, I misnumbered a bunch of these.
You have a lot.
I have
Like I said,
8,
4 hours worth.
9, 10, 11, 12 things to go, 13 things to go. Okay. So we're going to kind of rapid fire through these a little more than what we've been doing for talking about them. I didn't realize I actually had this many. So we'll talk about these. We'll fire off the numbers and then we'll talk about each one a little bit. HF 2865. This bill appropriates $22.9 million for fiscal year 2026 and $12.9 million for fiscal year 27 to the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency. The funds support the Economic Development and Housing Challenge Program and low to moderate income housing programs. So first of all, that's right now we're talking about $35 million in the next 2 years. But there's a kicker, and I'll let you give one guess on who is sponsoring this bill. A portion of these funds, $1.2 million in 2026 and annually thereafter, is dedicated to housing projects for American Indians.
That would be our Duluth News Tribune endorsed Representative Alicia Klosowski.
That is correct. Because you know why? Because Alicia is part Native American, and that's what her bills are all geared toward. She does not do bills that are geared for everybody. She does it based on her groups, LGBTQ, Hispanic, and Native American. Otherwise, she'll jump onto some other bills that are easy peasy bills, and, something that's a no-brainer. But when it comes down to the real, this is a bill that I've sponsored, that I've created, that's going to help the community, it's never about just everybody in general.
Right.
And if I was a Minnesota legislator and I started coming up with bills that were for Caucasians or for Finlanders or for Polish people, I would expect outrage. I would expect people to call me on it. And I would like to see some people starting to call her on this stuff too. The Native Americans here have their own reservation. They have their own sources of revenue, and they don't need this special carving out for just them too. It's just so much.
Right.
So, you want equality? Get it. Gen Z, how are we taught about equality? Everybody gets an equal shot, and then you do with it what you will. Their whole view of equality now is give me, give me, give me, give me, give me.
Right. Yeah, you need to. Every bill statewide has to be for everyone statewide, not just certain groups.
Right. All right. We're going to go to the next one. This was just pointed out to me by a guy named Mark, who I see every day because he parks my car. And he said, no, he does. He works in the garage.
Does he watch the show?
I don't think he watches the show yet, but I'm working on him.
There you go.
Yeah. HF 2736. mandatory fine for school bus stop signal alarm violations eliminated. So it used to be the case that it was a $500 fine mandatory if you drove past a bus with the signal alarm out. And we have a representative, Cedric Frazier from District 43A, that thinks that's not fair. You should be a case-by-case basis, shouldn't just be a mandatory amount. What do you think is causing this to be something that he says, it's time to remove this horrible, horrible thing that protects kids?
I can't think of that one.
I'm baffled by this. And in fact, when Mark told me about this as being a problem, I was like, that doesn't sound right. And I went and looked at some of the Senate bills. And the only one I could find that had to do with school bus arms, because the wording was kind of weird, was they wanted to increase the fine from $500 to $750 or something like that. That I understood. And I thought, well, maybe he just misheard about what the bill said. But then I did find out, I think Jeff Doseth posted something on Facebook to point it out. And then I went and dug around and found it. There's only one representative on this bill. It's Cedric. And I don't think this is going to get any traction, but it leads to a bigger thing. What I've noticed when I'm looking through these bills, because I'm really paying attention for the first time in my life, I'm looking at these Minnesota bills as they're coming out. This is just a bunch of people that are trying to figure out how to justify what they're doing down in the cities and how to spend money.
Right.
The amount of bills is 20 times higher than it needs to be. And it's amazing what they're going after. And I really seriously don't believe that a lot of these legislators even understand the bills that they put forth. Now, this guy, Cedric, I believe he does understand it because it's such a simple one. It's such a simple bill. But why would you do it? If somebody could explain this to me in a logical way, and I've read his explanation and I don't buy it. If somebody could explain this in the comments or send me an email or contact me through the site, I would love to see it because I like to be educated on this stuff. Maybe there's a logical reason. Cedric is a lawyer, so I'm assuming he understands. He's not just a bartender. That's nothing against bartenders, but he's actually a lawyer, so he knows the law. I'm guessing he has a good reason for it. He hasn't stated it yet. The reason he stated was ridiculous to me. It was very lawyerish. But to get rid of the $500 fine, why? You should be fined every time you do it. It should be worse the second time. And the third time, maybe you should lose your license because you're putting kids at risk.
If we can save one kid with this act,
yes,
we can save one life. That would be worth it.
That's our motto for everything. Lower the gas tax because if it just saved one life.
Yes.
All right. HF 1289. This is by Zach Stevenson from the DFL. And this is a social media platforms required to post a mental health warning label and timer notifications. So you can't go to a site anymore without it telling you, you might experience some mental discomfort and then have a timer pop up after a certain amount of times. Are you sure you don't want to take a break and go outside? And there's a word that we learned in college or high school or I don't know when called paternalistic. It's when your government is trying to be your mommy and daddy. And it's not the role of the government to be that. So get off our backs.
I mean, this is right off of the Chinese handbook.
Yes.
Because China doesn't allow their people, the kids under 16 or whatever the age is over there, to watch any social media unless it's about how great the Communist Party is.
Right. Yes.
So this is basically going down this is the first step to the path of you better believe what the government says, and we're going to control what you view because there might be some misinformation out there.
Right. So I'm going to go through the Grok summary of this because there's only 3 things that it really has to summarize. Mental health warning labels. The social media platforms must display a conspicuous warning label each time a user accesses the platform. The label must warn of potential negative mental health impacts, provide resources like the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, and only disappear if the user exits or acknowledges the risks and proceed. The label cannot be hidden in terms and conditions, cluttered with extraneous information, or disabled, except as noted. The Commissioner of Health with the Commissioner of Commerce would develop evidence-based guidelines for the label's contents, exempt from standard rulemaking process. Number 2, pop-up timer notifications. Platform must show a pop-up every 30 minutes of active use, informing users of time spent consecutively and total daily usage. So tracking as much as possible. Users must acknowledge the notification for it to disappear. Platforms may allow users to deactivate the timer or adjust its frequency up to a maximum of 60 minutes. Enforcement. This bill amends Section 323M32 to grant the Attorney General, authority to investigate and act against violations of these requirements. No private cause of action is created for individuals harmed by noncompliance. So, nanny state, unfunded mandates, causing companies to do the development for this kind of thing, make sure it's all in compliance. It's busy work, it's overreach, and the government should keep their frickin' faces out of these kind of things and let people solve this stuff for themselves. It's not your job.
And how would you, and it says of action is created for individuals harmed by non-compliance. So how do you, that's kind of vague language. What do you mean harmed by non-compliance? So basically everything you're getting harmed by?
Yes.
You know, if you see something you don't like, so therefore you can sue the web page?
It's vague enough to put that, yeah. And with our current Attorney General, he would do it. You know, Ellison? Yes.
Yeah, I mean, he's suing Trump 20 times already in less than 60 days. And
yeah,
you know, he didn't sue the Biden administration once.
Oh, so. Speaking of Alice, he's coming to Duluth April 5th for a talk, and you have to RSVP to even find out where or when it is. And I RSVP, but I haven't gotten any notifications back to find out if I'm going to be allowed to go to it. Wouldn't that be funny?
You're going to have, the FBI is going to have to investigate you first, or the Minnesota Department of Investigations will have.
Oh yeah, I think I just put myself on a honeypot list. I'm screwed.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, this podcast goes away and somebody else comes up. Hello, my name is Shawn.
Shawn here.
Well, I don't remember what his last name is. Let's see. HF 2325, overtime pay required on holidays. This requires employers to pay employees at least 1.5 times their regular rate for work performed on holidays. And those are defined as New Year's Day, Memorial Day, Thanksgiving. This ensures premium pay for holiday work, increasing labor costs for employers and boosting earnings for employees on those days, as it doesn't mandate holiday work itself. Again, government, make your own rules for your own employees and stay out of the private sector with this kind of crap. It's up to the employers to decide how much they're going to pay their employees, not you.
This seems like he's lining his own pocket, because maybe as a firefighter, maybe this is just normal wage and he doesn't like it, therefore he's going to line his own pocket.
I think they already get this. I think firefighters already get time and a half for holidays. It's just mandating it for everybody. This is a union mindset. This is a union guy's mindset is we will force the employers to pay this. We don't care what the cost is. It doesn't matter to us that the business have to pay for it. We're going to look like heroes. Right?
Right. It's buying votes is what it boils down to.
Here's one that the next one, HF 2195. This is Kozlowski and Pete Johnson are co-authors. Equal rights under the law provided and discrimination based on the listed characteristics prohibited and constitutional amendment proposed. And the ballot would say, shall the Minnesota Constitution be amended to state that marriage is a fundamental right and shall not be restricted based on race or gender or race. And my question is, why? Is it restricted? Is there talk about it being restricted on gender or race? Is this to make sure same-sex marriage is codified, or is this something else? And when has race ever been, ever? I mean, maybe back in the 50s and 60s, but you're going to try to outlaw race?
It looks like they want to add it to the Constitution, so it
They
can
do.
never be. But yeah, who's going to change it?
Who's pushing this? Yeah,
Right.
what's the impetus for this one? I do not understand. This is more of the busy work that I see that's happening. Got to push out some bills, man. And both Pete and Alicia are in agreement with this. So why are they doing it? What are those guys doing for Duluth? I mean, they're supposed to be representing the state in general, but Duluth specifically, there are very few bills that have anything to do with Duluth that are other than like entertainment things.
Right. Yeah, and coming from a party that can't define gender, how would you ever put that in? How would you ever make that a law when you can't define what it is?
Everything is legal. Everything is illegal. We're just in a Schrodinger's law now.
Right.
HF 2099, local government emergency management provided, report required. This is a Pete Johnson special. He's the chief and only author. And the Minnesota bill allocates $12 million annually in fiscal years 26 and 27 from the general fund to the Commissioner of Public Safety for local emergency management. The fund will be equally distributed to 87 counties, 11 federally recognized tribes, and 4 first-class cities for planning, preparedness, training, equipment, and infrastructure improvements. This funding supplements, not replaces, federal emergency funds. So we're already getting federal emergency funds to do this. But
Right.
apparently we need to pull $12 million extra money out to do this planning. And it's a report. I don't get it. I don't understand why. What kind of threats? What threats are they addressing? Weather, terrorist attack, earthquake, $24 million over 2 years in addition to the federal funding. Why? Again, let's just be clear. $8 billion in deficit. Is it $6 or $8 billion?
$6 billion.
$6 billion deficit projected for this next budget. So I don't get it. I think this is another. There's something behind this, and I don't think it's has to do with any kind of preparedness. I think this has to do with somebody that contributed or needs to have this done is getting their due.
Yeah, they're getting themselves put on the state payroll versus because they think they're going to lose their job federally.
It could be. That very well could be. HF 2059, local government required to establish residential instant solar permitting platforms and report required. Requires local governments with over 5,000 residents to adopt an automated residential instant solar permitting platform for residential solar photovoltaic systems. The platforms must instantly issue permits for code compliance applications, process at least 75% of applications on existing homes, and eliminate manual reviews during permitting and inspection. Authorities must submit a compliance report within 60 days of adoption and annual reports from 27 to 36, detailing usage and plans of increased adoption if needed. Inspections are required, with remote options offered, and only one inspection allowed unless failed. Non-compliance authorities may lose state funding eligibility. Permit-free jurisdictions are exempt. So cities are being stripped from zoning laws again, from zoning rights. And this is an unfunded mandate. This is requiring them to come up with their additional support and additional processes. They don't give any money for this. And this is to fast track stuff that may cause problems in the future. So if there's a scam artist out here with solar panels coming through, they're going to get a lot of installations before they're figured out and they flee the state.
Right. And then they want to fast track it. So, you know, if the mines want to do something, then it's 10 years and proof of working. And if you want to build a house in an undeveloped area, then you need a 3-year EPA permit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it takes 3 years to get it took them almost 5 years to get the permits to build an old Central's lot. But now they want for solar panels, then you can just do it instantaneously. We'll give you permits,
Right.
Free of charge, and just get it done. Yeah. I mean,
When it's something they want, boy, those rules don't really matter anymore, do they?
right. And you're dealing with a technology that homeowners can't. You do not want a homeowner to connect a solar panel into their grid for their house.
Mm-hmm.
You need professionals to do that.
Right.
I've been around them myself, and I wouldn't do it.
I don't play with electricity at home myself.
Right. And basically they're giving them free will to do this without, we'll come and inspect it after you're done, but whatever, just get it done.
I really dislike the fact that this is a state mandate on cities. If cities want to come up with this kind of plan for themselves, that city zoning is, that's a local thing. That's where people have their most impact, is with their local officials and their city officials. Not this, maybe there's a neighborhood that they don't want that blight, and maybe there's a homeowners association that doesn't want it. Doesn't matter. Now they're forced to agree with it. I really think this is a bad precedent, and it's just government overreach again, and it's big government. And we need to get these guys out of our lives, not more delved into them.
Well, actually, Elon Musk is in the process of developing solar panels that look like normal house roofing material.
Right.
So you can't tell the difference between. So are they going to, once they find out that his solar panels are on the house, are they going to burn the house down because Elon made it?
Yeah, well, that could be. I hadn't thought of that.
Elon derangement syndrome?
Right. All right.
Yeah,
we're going to move on. I think that would be probably what I would see. I was talking to somebody, and I said, well, I was noticing the Tesla trucks, and I noticed that when I first saw them, I thought, that is the stupidest looking truck I ever saw. But then I saw some that were painted up a little differently with black and different colors. And I thought stainless steel doesn't look good, but yeah, they can look all right. And they're pretty. I saw one used in a road test taking off from a dead stop next to a sports car, and the thing took off really fast. And the person said to me, "Oh, you don't want to get a Tesla right now. I mean, you get targeted." This is a certified Democrat that said this to me.
Right.
And she doesn't understand that that's your party. These are the people you support. When the conservatives didn't like Bud Light, you know what they did? They didn't buy it. They didn't torch Bud Light plants.
Right.
But that's what we're getting for this. Let's talk about HF 2721. And this is fire life safety damper testing established relating to state fire code. And this is a massive bill. And this is a Pete Johnson bill, has to do with fire, of course. This is what he knows. And so there's a very long list of requirements that are required for this bill. And so I happened to say, how much is it going to cost? And according to this, estimated costs are initial inspection and testing anywhere from $500 to $2,000 or more, depending on the building size and complexity of the systems. Periodic inspections every 4 to 6 years cost from $300 to $1,500 per inspection. Repair and replacement can be significant based on what's happening to them, and penalties of $1 or $100 a day for noncompliance. So what we have is another one of our unfunded mandates, putting more pressure on businesses and buildings. Now, I understand buildings have to have fire code standards, and I think they already do. And I'm not well versed into this. I just realized that it's, again, one of these things that says, thou shalt do this. The state is now running this as well. And the state has so much influence in everything we do. We're getting into being a very communist country. The state just decides what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, how you're going to do it, but you're free otherwise. It doesn't feel like freedom to me.
And like you talked about, like we talked about last week and the week before, about the state wants to take, or our representatives want to take over the state, the zoning laws.
Yeah.
So this is what you're going to get if that happens.
Right.
You're going to get state mandates. If your house is over 1,000 square feet, be prepared to put in fire dampers and sprinkler systems, and you're going to have to get it inspected every year at $2,000 a year,
Well,
plus
last
$100 a day.
Last year they tried to make it so you couldn't paint your house with a license. That you'd have to be a licensed painter. It's ridiculous. We need less government.
Less mandates, yep.
HF 2518. Kozlowski co-authored this. Oh, wait, I missed one. I want to do this one first. HF 2289. This is a Pete Johnson, chief author. Hospital required to provide registered nurse staffing at levels consistent with nationally accepted standards. We talked about this last week.
Yep.
But I wanted to run through a cost. And for a medium-sized hospital, the total cost would range from $1 to $3 million per year, depending on the staffing. Unfunded mandates. Again, you wonder why our health costs are so high. The state of Minnesota puts so many mandates in place. They have to hire teams of people to just keep on top of them.
Right.
And then they have to spend the money to actually implement them. It's a fine line, but at some point, when have we got enough laws? It should be a rule for every one of these kind of laws we put in. We got to take 2 away.
And that's what Trump said when he came in. For every one law they start, 5 have to disappear.
Perfect.
So, we're going to have to wait on Trump a little bit to get things, to feel the effect of what he's doing, but it'll come around.
Right. HF 2518, Women Venture Grant funding provided. Report required, money appropriated. $8 million in fiscal year 2026 is appropriated to the general fund to the Commissioner of Employment and Economic Development for a grant to Women Future. Women Future is a site. There is a place. I did a little research taking from their organizational website, womenfuture.org, and looked, and it looks like their lobbying expenditures during a 4-year period is $1.7 million.
Wow. That's crazy.
This is an NGO, non-government organization. If we can't do it as a government, if you're trying to get these things done as a government organization, do it yourself with your employees. Stop giving money to non-government organizations to do it. You lose your oversight. You get this kind of stuff too. Funding back into the party that's providing the money for it. This is a co-authored Kozlowski special right here. $8 million. When are we going to start cutting these things off so that we can keep our money for ourselves? And Alicia, if you want to contribute to these places, open your pocketbook and do it yourself, or get other people to help you out. Stop taking my money to give it to organizations like this, especially if you don't identify as a woman.
Right. And if their lobbying expenditures are 1.7 million, it means that they're giving back to the government. So that means the government's giving it to them, and they're giving it back to the politicians.
Well, I mean, they're not directly giving money to the politicians, but they're spending the money to get more of their money. So they take our money to go back to pay people, so they get more of our money to go back into them. So it's a never-ending cycle.
And that's what's got to stop. I did see a Republican representative, talking about the scam that is the state paid private organizations to give it back to the state to lobby for more money.
Right. That's what this is.
And I lost the video. Otherwise, we'd be showing it now.
Right.
That is a total waste of state money, of taxpayer money, and we should never be doing it. We have to put an end to that.
Exactly.
And here's her trying to promote it.
HF 2841, school system video funding provided and money appropriated. There are no Duluth representatives on this bill. This bill proposes a one-time grant of $800,000 to Cultural Connections from the Department of Education. The the Department of Education that's so on top of giving out money and maintaining it and making sure there's no fraud,
Right.
to create videos that explain the U.S. school system to immigrant students and their parents. The videos will be distributed to 320 middle and high schools, translated into parents' first languages, and designed to promote integration, parental involvement, and student success. The goal is to narrow knowledge and achievement gaps by helping immigrant families understand the school system and support their children's education. The appropriation is for fiscal year 2026 and is meant to support better outcomes for immigrant students through increased parental engagement. What a load of crap this is. First of all, the schools aren't complex enough not to be able to understand them. Secondly, if you're coming to this country, you should understand that you have to go into a school system and figure it out. It's not our job to translate videos into your language to explain that we have a public school system that's basically here to accommodate you.
Right.
This is almost $1 million to another organization from the Department of Education to do this.
Especially when we have all these schools around the area looking for money. And then, Hermantown was looking for $700,000 over the next 5 years. Well, we just covered it.
Right.
Now they don't have to look for money. There's one school that we've just fixed.
Right.
Plus they're going to give $100,000 back. And the last line is interesting because it says through increased parental engagement. Well, our Minnesota schools are trying to get rid of parents. They're trying to indoctrinate them so the kids hate their parents. The kids will have a sex change based on what the teacher says, and so on and so forth. But the immigrants, well, they need to get the parents more involved.
If I emigrated to another country, I would expect to figure this out for myself.
Yeah.
And TS, tough noogies.
Noogies, yep.
The last one, no, it's not the last one.
It's never the last one.
SF 2000. It's a bipartisan bill, HF 2318, introduced March 13th, would make teachers eligible for early retirement benefits at 60 years old instead of 62. A Republican-led bill, HF 2329, introduced the same day, would allow retirees who are at least 62 to receive their pensions without any reductions. Another bipartisan bill, HF 1582 and Senate version SF 2000, would make K-12 teachers eligible for early retirement pensions at 60 years old without any reductions to their pension and require employers to contribute more to all teacher pension plans. SF 2000, which is supported by Minnesota's Teachers Union, Education in Minnesota, is nearly identical to the two other bills, but proposes higher employee pension contributions. So I'm surprised the teacher union is doing this. I'm not going to be able to retire until I'm probably 65, just so I can get on Medicare and have money in the bank. But these guys can retire at 60 years old with full benefits. Great. What a great job. So the co-author, Heather Gustafson of Van Ness Heights, they had a little article here. It says, this is a direct quote, "Being a teacher is one of the hardest jobs in our state." You've got to be kidding me. I'm not saying teaching is an easy job. Go roof for a day. Go to the septic systems and clear out one of the septic pipes. Go collect garbage for a day. Go fix roads for a living. Do some manual labor. Don't tell me how hard teaching is. Every job is hard. And I think you said it once best that said, yeah, there's a place there, a group of us meet that have jobs that suck and we hate our boss. It's called the bar, and we meet every Friday at 5.
Yeah.
And she was a teacher. It's just everybody thinks, or not everybody, lots of people think that they have a unique misery when it comes to their job, and it's just not the truth. It's self-pity. And quit telling me how hard it is to be a teacher. All the jobs are hard. Some are worse than others, but there's no job that you're like begging to go to work every day, just happy as can be. Every job has its challenges, and a lot of them are more physical than being a teacher. There's a lot of jobs where guys retire and their backs are shot, their knees are shot. That's That's from doing the heavy lifting every day. Jobs you don't want to do. And it would be interesting to see what would happen if the school teacher had a job doing that for a couple of weeks, see what they had to say about a tough job.
But what about a downtown Minneapolis, downtown St. Paul police officer?
Right. Yeah.
Where crime is going through the roof, and you could be shot and killed on any day.
Right.
Any day of the week.
Even firefighters get shot out in Minneapolis when they go to a call. But being a firefighter is a hard job.
Yeah.
It's stress. State trooper, Mark McGrew, he was a state trooper that ran for office in West Duluth last time. He told me that most police officers have heart conditions because of that adrenaline rush they have to go through all the time. And, so don't tell me your job is really hard. It comes on deaf ears. Yes, I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying stop being so self-pitied to think that your job is uniquely hard compared to other people's. Be a guy that has to look through freaking child porn and tell me how bad your job is. Right. I don't even know how those guys can do it. And
the last one,
HF 2591. I didn't put that much down for this one. I must not have had much time. Kozlowski co-authored fifth tier of individual income tax at a rate sufficient to offset lost federal Medicaid funds established. I have to look into that one again because I'm not sure what I
put that one in there.
Oh, you did?
That one in there. Yeah.
Okay.
And President Trump repeatedly said he's not touching Medicare, Medicaid, or Social Security.
Yeah.
So she introduces a bill to offset the funds that we're not going to lose from Trump, from the federal government. So, like you said earlier, she's just doing busy work. She's going to make herself feel good about herself. She's going to go on the campaign trail and say, well, look what I did. I put a bill in to offset what we lost from federal. Wait, we didn't lose anything from federal.
There's a ton of people signed. There's 35 authors on this.
Yeah. And we're not losing anything from them. And then they're changing the tax rates to tax us more on it. So it's just, luckily, what Kozlowski does, nothing ever got passed by her. And I wouldn't think raising taxes with the tie vote in the House is going to go any farther. But still, just the mentality of these people are just.
She's not the chief author right now. Gomez is the chief
she's a co-author.
I just looked at the chief author. Her hair is beginning to turn. It's starting to mold, apparently. It's got a tint of green. Oh, boy. Well, thanks for bringing that one up. It's something to look at. But, I listened to a phone call, a conference call that Pete Stauber had, where he addressed a bunch of issues, and then people were able to ask questions. And one of the questions was, I'm concerned about, the cuts that are being done to Medicaid and Social Security. And he's like, there are no cuts. The only thing that's attacking it is getting rid of the fraud. He said, we have found stuff in Medicaid where they're paying for housing. That's not what Medicaid's for. So they're cutting that out. Yeah. But as far as individual contributions from Medicaid, you're not losing anything. And I had this conversation with somebody that in my family about Social Security, and they said, well, get rid of that Social Security entitlement. It's not an entitlement. I've been paying Social Security my entire life from every paycheck I get. I'm not getting the rate of return I would have gotten if I'd invested myself. But don't tell me it's entitlement. It's my money I put into it. I deserve to get my money back. Right. And I won't most likely get all the money back I put in.
Not even close.
And it's certainly not going to be the rate I would have gotten if I would have done it myself. Even if I put it into a 5% interest, savings account.
It's technically a Ponzi scheme that Madoff went to jail for his whole life for.
Right. But you can do it in the government.
But it's like, it's legal in the government. So.
Well, a lot of gangsters have gone to jail for mob and racketeering. But if they'd have just been a government official, it would have been completely legal.
Right. Insider trading, blah, blah, blah.
Holy cow, we're already over an hour. Let's move on to Waltz. I think we're going to speed trial through this stuff. I'm not going to go through this whole thing that Waltz did for his budget, but go look it up, and maybe we'll do a succinct little section on this next time. But his budget is insanity, and it's going to impact a lot of nursing homes throughout the state. And a couple of I highlighted is Viewcrest Health Center in Duluth and Benedictine Health Center. Viewcrest losing $2.2 million, and Benedictine Healthcare losing $2.8 million from 26 to 29. But it goes on to just about every area. And Waltz doesn't think that retired people need to be looked after, as far as I can tell. And people in nursing homes, they're the most vulnerable because they can never re-earn their money that they need to do to get to survive. They're on their own. They're in the end stages of life. And those last few years shouldn't be in jeopardy and suffering because they don't have any money to pay for medication and heat and a place to live. And farming them all into one place, into multiple people per room, it's just not the way to end your life.
And yeah, I agree with you because he along with the Cuomo from New York were sending sick COVID people into the nursing homes.
Yes.
To go after the most vulnerable. So, why did Cuomo lose his job? And, why isn't Walz in jail for basically, assigning murder, murdering our old people? So yes. You're right. He doesn't care about old people. He doesn't care about kids. He doesn't care about old people.
Who does he care about besides his liberal friends? Because he let Minneapolis burn for 3 days.
Right. And he's all for the abortion side. So he'll gladly kill a kid too. So
any governor that put a sick person with influenza in a nursing home should be charged with murder. That includes Waltz, the lady from Michigan, yep. Cuomo from New York. I think there's a couple more. They should be, and if we had an attorney general worth his salt, we would have that being happening right now.
Right.
That was just incredibly stupid, and there's no excuse for it. Nobody in their right mind puts somebody with a flu-type symptom into a nursing home unless your intent is to kill those people.
Correct. He absolutely should be in jail for that.
All right. I'm going to move on to one more with Tim, and this is kind of adjacent to Tim. It's not a Tim thing, but it has to do with teaching, and he's probably got his chubby little fingers all over this. His professional educator's license and standarding board wants a new ethnic studies teaching license that would require teachers to analyze, and this is in quotes, analyze social and human relationships with the natural world through indigenous, pre-colonial, decolonial, and post-colonial lenses. I don't even know what I just said.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what? If this is what you think you should be doing to be able to teach, don't teach the subject you're talking about. If you can't come out of school being able to read and write and do math, you've failed. These kind of classes, they should all be optional, and the people that are teaching them should be paid through donations from liberal people like Waltz who can afford it. Optional classes done off of campus, and hey, go have at it. Have your little sessions.
And what does that qualify you for after you've taken the class?
Nothing. Or no, I'm sorry. Either political protests or working at Starbucks.
Correct.
Okay, we are on page 9 of 17. So we're going to keep going. Minnesota. U of M being investigated for discrimination. The University of Minnesota is being investigated for alleged violations of anti-discrimination law. Students must be assessed according to merit and accomplishment, not prejudiced by the color of their skin, said Secretary of Education Linda McMahon. So the University of Minnesota has long, since I was going to school there back in the 80s, was very much into discriminating against people based on the color of their skin. As a matter of fact, I remember a time, this is back in the 90s, and there was a group of people that said, we want a group for whites only. You have an Hispanic group, you have a group for Black people, you have a group for Native Americans, you had there was like 4 other groups that they had. So we want a group for just whites. And the president of the University of Minnesota said, there will never be, as long as I am president, a group for only white people. And my response to that was, why is it different? If you want to say it's bad for white people only to have the group, then you can't have the other groups. If you can have the other groups, you can have one for white people only. Why is it bad only because they're white people? And I still haven't understand that. So I'm glad the University of Minnesota is being looked into this, because I think they, like the other universities, are trying to figure out ways around this. And I think they should be slapped down hard, and it should be a merit-based system.
Well, I mean, and we're back to the incompetence of our attorney general. You know, it takes someone federally to come and look at it instead of locally.
Right.
You know, our attorney general is a waste of time, because he should have looked into it already. But we're not getting that. We got to wait until Mrs. McMahon comes in and starts an investigation.
Let's see. Number 2, 11 people charged for drug trafficking, kidnapping, and conspiracy in the Twin Cities. So, like it says, they were doing some really bad things, bringing large amounts of methamphetamine from Mexico to the Twin Cities. After the drugs were brought in, the members would reportedly break the methamphetamine down into smaller quantities to be sold. People charged are Richard Sanchez, I'm not even going to try, Mujica, 30 years old. Donovan Ray Lopez, 21. Erling Soren Hodal, 48. Dostin Elanzer Ortiz Garcia, 29. Jonathan Salvador Juarez Ferrer, 25. Timothy Dwayne Ripley, 45. And Kendra Sue Johnson, 39. So we've got a span from the age of 21 all the way up to 45. And 48, yeah, you're right. And they're doing a good job busting these kind of rings. I'm glad they're doing it, and I want them all to face a lot of time in prison if they're guilty of this crime. And if they're not from this country, I want them, after they serve their crime, to be deported back to their country of origin. I can't tell you if any of them are or not, but if they are, get them out.
But you know, they could always go back into school being a school teacher, because that's a lot more hard than busting up a meth ring.
That's true. Yes. Thank God I'm not in a classroom right now as a bullet whizzes by your head.
It's so much safer breaking up a meth ring, and you know, they were already planning on killing some guy who owed them money. But you know, schools, that's obviously much tougher.
Yeah, I don't want to do that. I'll be a pastor instead, maybe.
Yeah.
All right. So those are my Minnesota segments. So now we're going to move on to the national segment. Let's see. You're looking at it before. Harvard is now offering remedial math classes. So remember when we were talking about that merit-based admission into schools? Yeah. That eliminates this kind of thing. If you're doing remedial math, you don't belong at Harvard. You don't belong at any university doing remedial math.
Correct.
We're not talking about just going through algebra. We're talking about remedial math, addition, subtraction. You got out of high school and you can't do it. That's a failure on your school that you were at. You've gotten into college and you still need this class. That's a failure in the college admission.
Yeah,
And it
yeah.
drives me crazy.
How do you get even past admissions if you need remedial math?
Yeah, exactly.
Especially especially at an Ivy League school.
Right. Yeah. How is this getting through?
It's just ridiculous. I guess the rule is don't hire people from Ivy League school because you don't know if they're. You gotta give them a math test first, I guess.
I have a really hard time dealing with doctors that are young now, and it's like I want older people to be my doctors because it doesn't matter their race, it doesn't matter their sex, it doesn't matter their religion. If they're older, that means they came in through a system that required them to be decent at their job. And now I don't know that that's a fact. And it doesn't matter the race or religion or gender anymore because anybody can get in for anything apparently. And they just, instead of having, when they see that there's a disparity, they get rid of the thing that's causing the disparity instead of getting rid of the people that are causing the disparity. When we were living in the Twin Cities and it was hey, this group of people were being disproportionately represented in the suspensions from school for violence. What they did was made a rule saying you can't suspend kids for violence. And therefore they took care of that problem in the wrong way. Instead of taking care of the kids, they took care of the situation that caused the disparity. And then they just patted themselves on the back for helping out equality.
Right.
Let's see. The next one is a fun one. Germany. The government warns travelers not to break U.S. laws during Trump administration or they might lose their visa access or future entry. And they're trying to spin this as if it's a slam against Trump. So if you go to the United States as a foreign visitor and you break the law, you might lose your visa and you might not be allowed back in. What country allows that besides the United States? And Germany is acting like this is a slap against Trump. This is the way it should be.
Yeah, what did they expect when Biden was in office that it was okay to, break the laws over here?
I think they knew it was okay. And, so they're fine with that.
Well, who was it, that WNBA player, that Brittany Griner? She broke Russian law, ended up in Russian jail.
Right.
Well, what does he expect from the U.S.? You break our laws, you go to U.S. jails. Pretty simple.
Yeah. You'd think. That's the common sense approach.
Although in New York, just this morning or yesterday morning, they arrested a Muslim female that was helping out Hamas.
Oh, yeah.
She was leading the protests and all that. So they grabbed her and took her visa away because visa is a luxury, not a,
Yeah.
So
if you're going to come here to protest, go back home.
If you're going to support the terrorists, we don't need you here.
Right.
So they sent her back in.
I want to see if I've got this. I don't want to add too much here, but I saw this. Oh my God, we got a lot of stuff to go over still. In England, they wouldn't evict. They wouldn't send a Pakistani guy who was convicted of molesting kids back to Pakistan. You know why? Because he's an alcoholic. And it said it would have violated his human rights because they would have looked badly on a Muslim who was drinking, because drinking is not allowed for Muslims. So he would have faced, human rights charges by being pushed back. So let the pedophiles stay in England. They're lost. That country is done.
Yeah. I seen one on the same thing in Ireland this morning also, where the Muslims could pray in the streets, but the Catholics have to pray in the church, if otherwise they'll get arrested.
Yeah.
So there's they're losing their culture and people are not happy about it.
Yeah, and they're right, and they need to stop it. Let's go on to the next thing so I can NYU diversity numbers. So somebody hacked into the NYU website, and all they did was posted information, and they talked about SAT scores and GPAs based on race. And they said, so the Asian SAT scores for the admissions into the NYU were about 1485. For white, it was 1428. For Hispanics, it was 1355. And for Black, it was 1289. And then they went to go talk about the GPAs and the ACT scores that were being admitted. For Asian, it was 32.9. White is 31.14. Hispanic was 29.51. Black was 27.78. And then the average GPA was 3.6 for white, 3.66 for white, 3.61 for Asian, 3.57 for Hispanic, and 3.43 for Black. You would think that if you were given a equal test and equal admission, that level would be basically the same across every race.
Right.
But what they're pointing out is they're letting people in because of their race as opposed to because of their merit. And so the funniest thing to me was the response was, we've got to get this person that did this. This is illegal and you can't be breaking into our systems, not addressing the problem of you should be basing your admission based on race, or not on race, but on merit, not on race. So,
yeah, I mean, Trump is doing a lot on meritocracy, and by getting rid of DEI, they want the best people in, blah, blah, blah.
yeah.
You want to be a firefighter, you want to be, whatever, you need to be qualified to do that job.
When I was running for city council, one of the people asked me, why do you hate DEI? And my response was, I don't hate it. I never said I hated it. I think it's useless. I understand what you're trying to do as a person. Maybe you think this is the best thing, but it's the worst thing you can possibly do. So it's not like I hate it. I don't agree with it, and I think it should be eliminated.
Right.
She overestimated my passion for the subject. It's not that it's one of those things that riles me up. It is just blatantly wrong.
But how would you like to be the person who got the job just to fill a quota?
Well, yeah. Well, if it was the only reason I got the job is to fill a quota, I'd probably feel pretty good about it. The people that are going to feel bad about it is the ones that get the job because they met the requirements. They're good at their job, but they always have this slight look on them because you don't know if that's the case. So they're going to be assumed that they're just a DEI. And that's the worst part of it, I think. I should be able to look at a doctor and say, well, they got their degree, they must know what they're doing. But I can't do that necessarily because too many of these people, and I experience it with computer science, they get their degree and they don't know what they're doing. They just got their degree. And that's just horrible. And we've been facing this. I mean, this DEI stuff has been around. This used to be called affirmative action. That was where it was before it was put on steroids and put on DEI. And I was facing this back when we were graduating high school back in 85. That's a long time ago. We've been facing this as Generation X our whole lives. They've had affirmative action since we've been alive. And we got to see it happen in our schools. I got to see scholarships that I patently could not get because of my race. Grants I could not get because of my race. And them going out of their way to recruit people based on their race. And that's just a hard way to grow up. And that wasn't even as bad as it is today when we were growing up. It was just starting. And I think that's why they're saying that Gen Z is the most conservative generation by far coming up, because they've been tortured with these policies that don't work. And they're getting angry. And I can't wait to see this snapback. All right. Let's see. I lost my documents. I got to find it again. Here. Let's see. So another race hoax. This seems to happen more often than not when somebody cries that there was racism at a place, and this has happened a few times through the years. The school board member was charged after allegedly planting a noose on her own desk, and her DNA matched the what was on it, both on the outer surface and inner knotted portion. So, God. And you know what the problem is? Oh, go ahead.
The point of the story is they were trying to figure out what to do with her. Is, what kind of punishment? We can go back to the 1500s when they're talking about an eye for an eye. And the real story behind eye for an eye is not, if you kill somebody, you should be killed. It should be, if you lie about something, you should get the same punishment as you're enforcing on somebody else. Yeah. So what punishment would happen to the person that she was trying to frame for her thing? Right. That's where an eye for an eye came from. And it's, like I said, back in the 1500s, it's dated back to. So, what would they do to the person that, if someone actually put a noose on her desk, what would they do to that person? Right. That's her punishment. That's what she should be facing. She should get, I'm assuming they would fire the person at least. Yes. Right. And that's what should happen to her.
That's the same for rape charges too.
Correct. Yeah. For
false rape charges. And it, just like false rape charges, what it does is it minimizes or discounts anything that when a person actually has this happen. Now, to be quite honest with you, and rape charges, that's an ongoing thing that's going to happen. It's going to happen for real, and it's going to happen for false charges forever. This noose crap, what are we in the 1920s? Right. I mean, who's thinking of that? You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to stick a noose on their desk. You got to be kidding me. It's like a playbook from 80 years ago, and it just doesn't wash anymore. And it's overdone. So it's time to stop that. And I do have a small item, though, is lots of people have been hung in the past. It's not just Black people, right? This country used to do hangings for punishment. People used to get mobbed and strung up on a tree. And to make it seem like it's a racial thing is just ridiculous. All right.
Yeah. We can move on.
I'm going to move on. I'm not going to talk about the conflict of interest one. Carrie Lake is now the head of, or she's been nominated to be in charge of the, what is it called, Dave? Help me out here.
I'm not sure what she was. I know they were talking about something, but I don't remember what she was being.
It's like for. It's communications or something, and she's a senior advisor to the agency. Let's see, U.S. Agency of Global Media.
Oh, okay.
And she said there's a reason it's referred to as pound for pound the most corrupt agency in Washington, D.C., because it is. Through an executive order, President Trump ordered this agency and its outlets reduced to their statutory minimum. So she posted some of the most egregious findings. Number one, massive national security violations, including spies and terrorist sympathizers and our support infiltrating the agency. Two, eye-popping self-dealing involving contracts, grants, and high-value settlement agreements. Three, obscene overspending, including a nearly $250 million lease for a Pennsylvania Avenue high-rise that has no broadcasting facilities to meet the needs of the agency and included a $9 million commission to a private real estate agent with connections. Hundreds of millions being spent on fake news companies and a product that often parrots the talking points of American adversaries. Says this agency is not salvageable. It kind of reminds me of NPR. That President NPR just went in front of Congress and they talked about bias, and she said, "There's no bias in NPR." I'm sorry. You listen to NPR, you can't tell me you can't see the bias. You got to be able to see the bias just in the stories they present. I'm not saying they're necessarily lying about anything, it has to do with what they are reporting on, what they're not reporting on, and how they report it. There's still media manipulation in that. You can't listen to NPR and think that that's a level playing field.
Right.
And for you and me to pay for that, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, if we need to, have if there's an emergency going on, there's enough emergency channels out there to give us the truth, not Trump or Trump derangement syndrome style reporting.
Exactly. All right. Biden hit a report revealing that the U.S. gas exports did not impact climate change. He hid this to push his climate agenda. The draft report found that across all modeled scenarios, an increase in U.S. LNG exports and natural gas production did not change global or U.S. greenhouse gas emissions, nor did it correlate with a strong uptick in energy prices for consumers. Not surprising, right?
Yeah, every single study that they've done has been debunked as far as man-made climate change. So you can't really believe anything that the climate activists want anymore. So
Right. Did you add this or did I?
I added that one.
I like this. I didn't think I added
else, but I thought it was appropriate because you have AOC, you have the German chancellor, you have.
Yeah, China is one of the most egregious ones, and I'm not even going to talk about climate change right now because I think it's a lot of BS.
Yeah.
But this is really true. But I love the vast part. How dare you? It's right, spot on. This is a pretty good one.
Yeah, you don't see her in China complaining. You see her here complaining. And we've already, it's already been proven we've our environment's getting better, but still.
Yeah. I got another one here I'm going to share. You must have added this one as well.
Yeah, I thought it was humorous.
I remember when we were going to have this big coming ice age.
Yeah.
I remember that in the 70s and thinking, oof, that seems bad. And then it suddenly changed to we don't have any gas. And then it changed to we don't have any electricity. And then it was the ozone layer. And then it was acid rain. And then it's global climate or no global warming. And now that's changed to global climate change. And it's all about taking money out of your pocket. So how to survive the coming ice age, the global warming survival guide. It's pretty spot on too.
Yeah, even it makes you wonder because it shows that they don't even know what they're talking about.
Is this real? Is this really the same? Is it the same cover? Because it's got a date of 1972 on this one and then a current date here. Did they really use the same picture?
Well, I didn't verify any of it, but I thought it was humorous because I've seen it in other things too where the oceans are rising, but they showed a picture of the Statue of Liberty when it was being built, and then they compared it to 2025, and the water level is exactly the same.
Yeah. We talked about that here at the deck when they rebuilt the retaining wall out there.
Okay.
Well, it's got to get replaced because of this, that, and global warming or global climate change. I'm looking at the pier and like that's been around for a while. You'd think it'd be underwater at this point, right?
Right.
But no, hey, it's about the same level it's always been.
Yeah, it's been 100 years, and the building that holds up the Palucci building is the same where it's always been, and it will always be exactly the same because we have the St. Louis River.
Yeah.
So if we get too much water in Lake Superior, it's going to drain down the St. Louis River and go out. It will be exactly the same forever, basically, as far as we're concerned.
But that doesn't make anybody any money. So we got to make sure people are always afraid. If you make sure everybody's always afraid about something or angry about something, you can get them to do what you want them to do.
Yes. They need a reason to raise your taxes.
Right. And they need a focal point for their rage. And it was in my lifetime, it was Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, George W. Bush. They made fun of his George H.W. Bush's vice president. I can't remember his name offhand. And then when Trump came along, boy, they've been dying on this guy. So they switched over to Musk for a while. But it's always somebody. They got to have somebody to focus the hate on, right?
Right. And which brings us back to Walz a little bit, which makes no sense because Walz is trying to collapse a company that he mandated 2035 that everyone is going to be having electric cars, but he's trying to destroy the number one seller of electric cars.
Right.
So what is, well, we know is he just a moron or?
Well, yeah.
I mean, he's so masculine, he's going to kick everyone's ass. And
he does scare me with his masculinity.
So did somebody kick his ass and we don't know about it? And now he's got head trauma? I don't know.
That could be.
I don't know. There's a long list of people that want him to try and raise a lot of money for charity, but there's no word from Walz.
All right, I'm going to move on to this this thing about Africa, and I want to play a clip. It's 1:13 from I'm not going to try to do her name, but it's former African Union ambassador to the United States. So I'm going to play this, and hopefully this will work this time. And it is this. Tell me if you can hear it.
Understand the real reason why USAID is in Africa. And not just USAID, but other NGOs. You look at DFID, which is the British equivalent, and many other smaller ones. Their sole purpose was to act as if they're coming to rescue Africa. They are coming in claiming that they're introducing grassroots initiatives that are going to help the people. And so they use that as a way to go into the most remote parts of Africa. When you look at it on paper, it all looks really good, but they're actually wolf in sheep's clothing. They are using that open access sounding humanitarian to constantly destabilize governments. I can tell you right now, the majority of African leaders, and not just African leaders, but leaders in the developing world, are celebrating the exit of USAID. If you think about it, their sole purpose, for example, filling in the gaps in healthcare and education. Where is the change? Show me one country that USAID was in and education improved. Show me what country where USAID was in and healthcare improved. The social services they're bringing, it's peanuts. The American taxpayer needs to know the billions of dollars that are being given to USAID, a fraction is making it to the people.
I think that says it all. I mean, that's pretty clear and head on. USAID was a slush fund. There's something else called FMCS that we need to look into. That sounds like it's another slush fund. And it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with this coming election when these things are dried up and cut off and they no longer have an ability to propagandize and put and fund these protests that they've been funding over the years. So I'm very much looking forward to this coming election and the next few elections, assuming that a federal judge doesn't decide that he's president and will stop it from happening.
Right.
Yeah, almost done here.
And that's back to the conflict of interest that we didn't have time to cover. That same judge is going to be who wanted to keep all the Honduras gang members. He has also been put in charge of the texting from that just happened on the supposedly war texts.
Yeah, they're judge shopping. They get all these right to the right judges so they can get the verdicts they want. That's not how you run a country, and that's not how you run a democracy. These guys are not elected. They shouldn't have this kind of power. And I heard some talk about having a 3-judge panel needing to be done as opposed to a 1-judge panel now. and getting this away from them, because they are not elected. This is not their right to do this, and we need to stop it right away. I'm going to go talk about Sky News Australia. The Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, has been urged to call an emergency meeting after the Trump administration cut grants to 7 Australian universities. Please tell me why we're funding Australian universities. Can you reason that one out?
I couldn't figure that one out either. Especially when every single school in Minnesota is begging for money, and yet we're supplying other countries with money.
Right. So we're gonna wrap up here pretty quick, but I'm going to do a screenshot of both of these next 2 topics. And it is coming up now. So let's talk about the last week accomplished by the Trump administration. We've had terrorist deportation strikes hit HUSIS, Boeing, NVIDIA, and J&J announced investments, EO to dismantle the Department of Education, and astronauts were returned home thanks to Elon Musk's group. JFK files were released, and egg and gas prices dropping. So we've got some good traction. We're seeing some good stuff, and pretty happy about what is going on. I've been telling you, Dave, it's like Christmas all the time with the Trump administration in place. After seeing 4 years of Joe Biden and what he was doing, I think this is really a refreshing thing to look at, to see a president that is actually looking out for the American people. There's lots of stuff that I still think need to be done. I still want to see the Epstein files. I think that needs to get out, but that's not a immediate need kind of thing.
Right.
I think we need to know why a woman went to jail for sex trafficking children, but none of the people that were doing the trafficking for have been put into jail. So I'd like to see that resolved, and I'd like to see some butts in jail.
Correct. Absolutely.
But we're only 2 months in. So hopefully if these activist judges get out of the way, that we can keep going forward and getting some of this stuff done.
Right.
And I also wanted to talk about the Democrats and some money. I think this is our last thing, actually. And so when they talk about the Democrat or Republicans and their money, and they're talking about the billionaires and the oligarchy and all that, for every 1 billionaire that backed President Trump, Kamala Harris had 2. 9 of the 10 richest counties in America are represented by Democrats. 65% of Americans making over $500,000 a year are Democrats. 75% of hedge fund managers who make political donations donate to Democrats. And then 95% of political donations from the top 3 management consulting firms go to Democrats. I noticed that the Democrats have been touting a lot about and making a lot of noise about billionaires lately. And do you know why that is? Because most of them are millionaires. Bernie Sanders, who's never had a job outside of government,
Right.
has 3 estates and is a multimillionaire. AOC, who came in, I think, in debt into the government, is now a multimillionaire. So there's a reason they focus their rage at billionaires, is because they can't keep focusing on themselves. And Bernie Sanders used to be railing against millionaires until he became one. And I mean, that's pretty typical, though.
Yeah, until he was called out about how rich he was.
Right.
He was talking about taxing the rich millionaires.
Right.
But now that's out. Now that he's been called out, now he wants to go after billionaires.
Right. Okay. Well, I think at an hour and 43, we've broken it now. This is maybe our longest podcast, but we'll end up with health and fitness. I have been trying to get out, and the reason we do this is to encourage people to go out and get healthy, go on walks, get up and down, do a sit-up, do a push-up if you can, do something to get yourself better than you were last week. Eat a little healthier. You gain muscle in the gym. You lose weight in the kitchen.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
so if you're just working out, don't expect to lose weight. If you're just dieting, don't expect to gain muscle mass. And I think it's important to do both. And to keep things honest so that we're following our own rules, we talk about what we've done in the last week. I heavy lifted once, and then I've been running, I think, 4 times since the last podcast. So it's down from when I was on Maui, because I just don't have access to the outside like I did out there. How about you?
I got 2 lifting, 1 really heavy, 1 mostly heavy, and one poor cardio. The weather hasn't been great, so as soon as the weather improves a little bit, I'll get outside. And tomorrow's going to be horrible, but you know, that's what the treadmill's for, I guess.
Yeah, right.
But you got to remember the heart is a muscle, so you know you need your cardio exercises out there to keep that strong.
Right.
And keep eating, like you said, keep eating correctly, and then that'll take care of most of your physical problems, your medical problems, and keep the doctor away.
Working out and being physically fit doesn't guarantee you a long life, or it doesn't guarantee you that you will necessarily always be healthy, but it's your best shot. My dad was the most healthy person I ever knew, physically fit, never sick a day in his life. And I'm coming up to about a week away from being as old as he was when he passed away from a cerebral hemorrhage. So it can happen to anybody at any time, but you know what? It really does pay off in the long run. The better you take care of yourself, especially when you're younger, and you keep up at it, the better you're going to be as you get older, cognitively and physically. And it really does make a big difference in people's lives, especially when they get to retirement age.
As soon as you quit moving, you're in trouble.
You quit moving.
You quit moving. And it makes it harder. And it makes it everything more difficult. Then you don't want to move. You just want to sit on your couch.
Right.
Just keep moving.
You remember when I was in high school and I had all my knee and hip problems and couldn't run.
Yeah.
And so I experienced probably what it feels like to get to be older, and it's not pleasant. Not being able to move around and being in pain all the time, and it saps your strength and it saps your life forces away. So try to keep up, try to keep as busy as possible. I know that some people have a hard time and it's not always fair why you can't do something, but try to make yourself better this week coming up. Get more motion. It'll pay off in the long run, even if it's small. Little bits help over time, continuous work. So that's my advice.
And you will improve. The more you do it, the more you improve. It might suck at the beginning, but it'll improve. I guarantee it. So,
all right. With that, I think we're going to sign off. So I appreciate everybody that has been watching and will watch in the future. We're going to try to split up this podcast now into the different sections that we talk about to make it a little more consumable. But if you want to watch the whole thing, hats off to you. Please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps us know that people are watching. You can send me links or suggestions of what we should talk about. If you decide you wanted to be participant in the show, you may do that. We'll have to talk first. And if you want to do it anonymously, you can do that. You don't have to show your face. You could always have an image up and not give your name. If you want to talk about a certain subject, let me know. Otherwise, we will do this all again next week. Once again, my name is Shawn.
And I'm Dave.
And that was the Duluth Conservative for the week and the day of March 27th, 2025. Everybody have a good night, and we'll talk next week.